I tell myself this for many years now. So many that sometimes it seems I was born with this whisper. It's deeper in me than my voice, deeper than my breath. Even my thoughts now don't come in words, but in subtle tones cautiously, as if walking on thin ice. The room is small. It knows me better than I know myself. Everything here has long since grown accustomed to the silence. The walls don't like loud sounds. They immediately tense up, as if listening. The floor creaks resentfully if you step on it abruptly. That's why I walk slowly. First a thought, then a movement.
Noticing.
Rushing is noise. Sometimes I catch myself coughing into my hand, even though there's no one around. A habit, no, not a habit, caution. It remains when everything else is gone. Neighbors live behind the wall. I don't know their names. And, to be honest, I don't want to know them. Names make people closer, and closeness is dangerous. Sounds are enough. Laughter. Footsteps. Sometimes arguments. Sometimes music. Their music is loud, confident, as if the world belongs to them. But me, the world hasn't belonged to me for a long time. I'm a guest here. Quiet. Unobtrusive. Once upon a time, I spoke loudly. Yes, there was a time like that. My laughter then spilled across the kitchen, across the yard, across my life. I could argue, interrupt, laugh so loudly that the neighbors would come out to see what was happening. Back then, I wasn't afraid of being heard. I wanted to be heard. But life knows how to teach. Slowly. Persistently. Sometimes cruelly, but I won't talk about that. No, not today. Today I'll just say, with age, you understand that an extra sound can turn into extra attention. And attention means questions. And questions mean pain. That's why I whisper. I whisper when I wake up. I whisper when I brew tea. Even my kettle is old and quiet. I don't buy a new one, they whistle. And whistling is almost like screaming. I don't need screaming. The morning starts the same way. I sit on the edge of the bed and wait for my body to wake up. It's old, stubborn. It needs time. I don't rush it. We made a deal a long time ago. It doesn't let me down suddenly, and I don't demand speed from it. Outside the window is the courtyard. Also old. The trees have grown taller than me. They make noise, but that's okay. Their noise is natural, not human. Human noise is different. It always demands something. Sometimes I think the neighbors are listening. Not intentionally. It just happens. They can hear me moving a chair, closing the cupboard,
Sighing.
A sigh is also a sound. It's hard to control. Then I freeze. I sit without moving. Even my heart seems to try to beat more quietly. Funny, isn't it? A heart can't whisper, but I still ask it to. When evening comes, the silence becomes thicker. It's like a warm shawl. It wraps around me. But there's anxiety in it. Because in the evening, you can hear everything. Every little thing. Every stranger's step behind the wall. Sometimes I hear someone laughing.
Young. Carefree.
Such confident laughter. I close my eyes and think how wonderful it is not to be afraid of being heard. That's a luxury. Youth always thinks it will last forever. I'm not envious.
No.
I'm just remembering. I had a husband, a quiet man. He never raised his voice, not even when he was angry. He said that loudness meant a lack of words. We understood each other with just a glance. He also loved silence. Maybe that's why we lived together for so long. He left as quietly as he lived, without a fuss, without complaints. I still sometimes expect him to come into the kitchen and whisper, "Why aren't you sleeping?" My daughter. No, I speak about her in a whisper too, because it's a sore spot, and pain doesn't like loudness. It only intensifies with it. My daughter was different.
Fast. Loud.
She always felt that the world wouldn't hear her if she didn't shout. She left early. She said that it was too cramped for her here. I didn't hold her back. You can't hold back those who want to run away. She calls sometimes.
Rarely.
She speaks quickly. She asks how I am. I answer, fine. That word means nothing, but it suits everyone. She doesn't hear the pauses. And the pauses are the most important thing. When the conversation ends, I hold the phone in my hand for a long time. It's warm, as if her breath is still in it. Then I put it down slowly,
Carefully.
so there's no sound. Sometimes I think that if I say something extra, if I allow myself to be loud, something bad will happen. I don't know exactly what. But fear doesn't like specifics. A feeling is enough for it. That's why I choose a whisper. It doesn't betray. It protects. It keeps you inside yourself. Mom, speak in a whisper. The neighbors shouldn't hear. I repeat this like a prayer. And in this prayer is my whole life. Quiet, careful, but alive. As long as I'm whispering, I'm here. Sometimes life brings small surprises. One of them is waiting in the description. At night, the walls become thinner. I know this for sure. During the day, they still hold up, pretending to be strong and reliable, that there's a distance between me and other people. But at night the distance disappears. Only sound remains. I lie and listen. Not because I want to, but because I can't help it. Old people's hearing sharpens not out of curiosity, but out of loneliness. When there's no living breath nearby, you start clinging to any confirmation that the world still exists. Footsteps behind the wall. Slow at first, then faster. The sofa creaks. Someone coughs, without trying to hide it. It always surprises me how easily people allow themselves to be heard, as if they won't be punished for it, as if they are sure they have the right. I prop myself up on my elbow and freeze. I even try not to move the blanket. It can rustle too, and rustling is almost an admission. I'm here. I don't need anyone to know that I'm here. Sometimes I think my neighbors know more about me than I think. Not from words, but from the silence. From how long I don't play music. From the fact that I never slam the door. From the fact that my TV is almost always on mute. People sense the absence of noise. It makes them wary. I'm afraid that one day they will knock.
Just like that. To ask. To check.
To find out who lives so quietly behind this wall. I'm preparing for it in advance. I'm rehearsing phrases in my head. Short ones. Without unnecessary words. Nothing personal. Nothing that could be used against me. But they don't knock. And that's even scarier. Because the waiting is more exhausting than the knock itself. During the day, I try to be useful. To myself. Water the flowers. Wipe the dust. Carefully, without sudden movements. Every object here knows my hands. I've lived with them for a long time. They don't resist if you treat them gently. Sometimes I catch myself apologizing to things. In a whisper. If I bump into a table. If I drop a spoon. A spoon is a catastrophe, really. The sound of it echoes throughout the apartment. I freeze then. My heart sinks somewhere down, and I wait. A second.
2, 3.
Will there be footsteps behind the wall? Most often, no. But the fear has already awakened. And it doesn't go away easily. I used to not be afraid of people. I was afraid of loneliness. Now it's the opposite. Loneliness has become familiar. It's like an old coat, warm, worn in places but mine. And people have become something unpredictable. Sometimes I think, maybe I've imagined it all. Maybe nobody cares about me. Maybe I'm just an old woman who thinks too much. But then laughter rings out from behind the wall, sharp, sudden, and I flinch. My body remembers. It knows that the sound can be the beginning of something unpleasant. I remember times when the neighbors were different, when the doors weren't closed so tightly, when you could knock and ask for salt. Back then, the noise was alive. Now it's alien. It doesn't invite, it invades. Sometimes I dream that I'm speaking loudly, even shouting. It's easy in a dream. Words flow, they don't get stuck in my throat. And the people around me listen. Nobody judges. Nobody listens with suspicion. I wake up from my own breathing. It's heavy.
Loud.
I immediately press my hand to my mouth, as if I can hold back the sound. It's funny. I'm afraid of my own voice. My daughter used to tell me, "Mom, you're too quiet. You can't be heard." And I thought, if I can't be heard, then I won't be bothered. I couldn't explain it back then, and I still can't now. Sometimes I deliberately turn on the water. Just a thin stream. It creates background noise. I can hide behind it. I can sigh a little louder. I can allow myself to move. Water is a good ally. It masks things. That's when I talk to myself. When the water is running, I say everything I don't dare to say in silence.
About fear.
About fatigue. About how hard it is to be invisible and how frightening it is to be noticed. Someone slams a door next door. I flinch, but quickly calm down. It's not for me. No one comes to see me anymore. And there's a certain safety in that. Mom, speak in a whisper. The neighbors shouldn't hear. I repeat this again and again. And the more often I repeat it, the more I understand. I'm not afraid of the neighbors. I'm afraid of crossing that thin line, beyond which I might be asked to be someone else again. And I don't want that anymore. I just want to be quiet, and for that to be enough. There are things that don't disappear. They simply go deeper. They hide so far away that it seems they're no longer there. And then one night, in the deepest silence, they suddenly rise up, without a sound, without warning. I thought for a long time that I had learned to forget. Old age generally creates this feeling, as if memory erases itself, like a blackboard that has been written on too often.
But no.
Memory doesn't erase itself. It just becomes quieter. Like me. I remember the day I first understood that words can be dangerous. I wasn't very old then. The house was full of people, voices, footsteps. Life was bustling, overflowing. I was part of that noise and didn't know that I would ever be afraid of it. It all happened because of a conversation. An ordinary one, at first glance. Someone said something unnecessary. Someone heard it. Then there were glances. Then unspoken words. And then silence. Heavy, sticky, the kind of silence where every sound is perceived as a mistake. That's when I first felt the urge to disappear. Not to die, no. Just to become invisible. Like a shadow in the corner. Like an object that has been forgotten. Since then, I started speaking more quietly. At first, it was almost imperceptible, a little softer, a little more cautious. I thought it was temporary, that it would pass. But habits born of fear live the longest. My husband noticed first. He once said, "You're like you're apologizing all the time, even when you're silent." I smiled. I didn't explain. How do you explain something that sits inside, constricting your chest and whispering, "Don't stick your neck out"? Then there was my daughter. She grew up loud, lively. I looked at her and rejoiced. And at the same time, I was afraid. Afraid that she would be heard the same way I was once heard. I asked her to be quieter, to be more careful. She laughed. She said I was imagining things. Maybe she was right, or maybe not. Sometimes at night I wonder, what if I was the one who taught her to leave? To leave for a place where you don't have to whisper, where you can speak in a full voice and not look over your shoulder. Someone drops something heavy behind the wall. The sound is dull, certain. I flinch. My heart skips a beat. Everything inside tenses up, as if preparing for defense. I wait. I always wait, even when I understand that there's nothing to wait for. At such moments, the past returns with particular clarity. I feel again how I clench my lips to avoid saying too much, how I choose my words as if walking through a minefield, how I learn to be silent at the right time. Silence then seemed like salvation, and it truly saved me from questions, from glances, from other people's conclusions. But along with that, it took away a lot. Laughter, spontaneity, the desire to share. I became a woman who keeps everything inside. Even joy is inside. Even pain is inside. Especially pain. Sometimes I feel like my neighbors sense it. Not consciously, but people feel the tension. They feel it when someone nearby is trying too hard to be inconspicuous. It makes them wary. So I try even harder. A vicious cycle. This afternoon I accidentally spoke aloud. Very quietly, but aloud. I said my husband's name.
Just like that.
It slipped out, like a memory that was tired of waiting. I immediately fell silent. I listened. My heart was pounding as if I had committed a crime. No one answered. It was quiet behind the wall. And suddenly I caught myself thinking a strange thought. What if no one hears me at all? What if my fear has been living on its own for a long time, without reason? This thought was frightening and liberating at the same time. I sat down in the armchair and allowed myself a little more air in my chest. Not loudness, no. Just not to constrict myself. It turned out to be difficult. My body resisted. It was used to something else. I thought about my daughter, about how she talks, how she laughs, how she's not afraid to be heard. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel anxiety, only a quiet pride and hope. Maybe the world has changed. Maybe the dangers I'm so afraid of are a thing of the past. And I'm still living where you have to whisper to survive. It's evening outside. The light is slowly fading. In this soft twilight, everything seems less sharp. Even fear. Mom, speak in a whisper. I still say this, but today a little differently. Not as a command, but as a habit from which, perhaps someday, I can rest. I'm not ready to speak loudly yet.
No.
But it seems I'm ready to stop being afraid of my own voice. Sometimes the smallest surprises change more than loud events. One of them is waiting in the description. Sometimes the silence ceases to be empty. It seems to gain weight. It becomes dense, palpable, like the air before a thunderstorm. I feel this especially clearly in the evenings, when the day is gone, but the night hasn't yet fully taken hold. I sit by the window. Not too close. The glass is cold, and I don't like the cold getting too close. I sit and listen, but not like before. Not searching for danger, rather testing myself, listening to how my heart behaves. It's still cautious, but no longer clenched in a knot. It's unusually quiet behind the wall today. No footsteps, no laughter, no television. Such silence used to scare me the most. In it, you can always hear your own thoughts, and they are the loudest. I think about how long I lived as if apologizing for existing, for breathing, for sometimes wanting someone to notice that I'm still here. I remember one day, nothing remarkable about it, but for some reason it keeps coming back to me. I was standing in a store and trying to tell the saleswoman that they had given me the wrong bread. The words got stuck. I smiled, took the bag, and left. At home, I stared at the bread for a long time, as if it were proof of my weakness. I could have said something. It would have been simple, but I didn't. And now, years later, I suddenly ask myself, what if I had said something? What would have happened? Would the world have collapsed? Would the walls have heard? Would someone have judged me? It's funny. Sometimes the scariest questions are the quietest ones. I get up and go to the kitchen.
Slowly.
Not as cautiously as before, but still attentively. I put on the kettle. It starts to heat up, making a familiar, comforting sound. I don't turn on the water. Today I'm not hiding behind the noise. I allow myself to think aloud, quietly but distinctly. The words sound unfamiliar, as if they've been waiting a long time for this moment and are now afraid to take an extra step. I'm talking about my husband, about how he laughed with his eyes, about my daughter, about how much I miss them. I'm not checking the walls. I'm not listening intently. I'm just talking. My heart is pounding, but it's not panic. It's something else. It's like the excitement before the first step. Suddenly, a sound comes from behind the wall. A step. An ordinary step. Nothing special. But my body reacts instantly. I freeze. The words stop. The air catches in my chest. There it is, fear. It always comes at moments like this. Reminds me of itself. Says, don't forget me. I protected you. I close my eyes.
Slowly.
Very slowly. And for the first time, I don't retreat immediately. I stand and listen as the footsteps fade away. No one is knocking. No one is shouting. No one is demanding explanations. Silence returns. But now it's different. There's no threat in it. Only space. I suddenly realize that fear is tired. It carried me for so many years, kept me within narrow boundaries, protected me as best it could. But now it doesn't know what to do next. The world around is changed, and it's still living by the old rules. I feel sorry for it. Strange, isn't it? To feel sorry for your fear.
But it's also a part of me. Aged.
Exhausted. I sit down at the table and pick up a cup. It's warm, reliable. I hold it with both hands and allow myself a small luxury, not to think about the neighbors.
Just not to think.
My thoughts immediately become lighter. They don't disappear, no, but they stop pressing down on me. I think about tomorrow.
About being able to go out into the yard.
Sit on the bench. Not necessarily talk to anyone. Just be. The thought of sitting on a park bench used to scare me. There were people there. Conversations. Stares. Now it simply exists. As a possibility. I remember my daughter asking me when she was little, "Mom, why do you speak so quietly?" I smiled then and said, "It's easier to hear myself that way." That was true, but not the whole truth. I could hear myself perfectly well, but the world, I heard it less and less. Maybe it's time to change that a little, not to shout.
No, I haven't lived so many years for that.
But not to disappear either. Outside the window, the lights are coming on, one after another. There's life in those lights. Someone else's life. But not hostile, just life. I take a sip of tea and allow myself to say aloud, almost in a normal voice, "I'm here." No one answers. And there's nothing wrong with that. Mom, speak in a whisper. I'm still whispering. But now I know, if I suddenly want to speak a little louder, the world won't fall apart. And the walls probably stopped listening a long time ago. Morning arrived unnoticed. It didn't burst in, didn't demand attention. It simply became lighter. I love mornings like this. They don't frighten me. They're like an old acquaintance who doesn't knock, but quietly opens the door and sits down beside you. I woke up earlier than usual. My body didn't ache yet. My thoughts hadn't yet become heavy. It was a rare moment when everything inside felt balanced. I lay there and listened to the house waking up. Not the neighbors, no. The house itself. The pipes. The distant elevator. The rustling of branches outside the window. And suddenly I understood. I wasn't looking for danger. I was simply listening. It was a new feeling, almost forgotten. I slowly sat up, put my feet on the floor, and didn't wait for fear to remind me of itself. It was, of course, somewhere nearby. But today it was quiet. Tired. I didn't chase it away. I simply didn't let it take the lead. In the kitchen, I opened the window. Just a little. The cold air touched my face, and I shivered. But not from fear. From the unexpected freshness. Voices drifted in from a street. Distant. Blurred. They didn't intrude on me. Didn't demand my participation. They simply were. I suddenly thought. I used to love the sounds of the morning. When the city was just beginning to speak. Not yet shouting. When everything was possible. I put the kettle on and let it make a little more noise than usual. Not intentionally. I simply didn't turn it down. My heart quickened for a moment, but then calmed down. Nothing happened. Sometimes changes come precisely like this. Not with loud decisions, but with a small permission. I drank my tea and looked out the window. A woman was sitting in the courtyard. I had seen her before, but always from a distance. We had never spoken. She was feeding the birds. She did it unhurriedly, as if she, too, had plenty of time. She raised her head and looked at my window. Our eyes met. I wanted to retreat. It was a familiar movement to hide. But for some reason, I didn't. I stayed. I just stayed. She nodded. Easily. Without question. Without expectation. She simply nodded, the way you nod to someone who exists nearby. And that was enough. I moved away from the window and suddenly felt a strange lightness. Not joy, no. Joy would have been too loud. It was something warm, steady, like the thought, I'm not alone. Not in the sense of a crowd around me, but in the sense that the world sees me and isn't frightened. During the day, I went out into the yard. It was almost an event. I took a long time getting ready,
Slowly, carefully.
as if I wasn't going to a bench, but somewhere very far away. My heart was beating fast, but steadily. The yard was noisy. Life was going on as usual. And, it didn't affect me. Nobody looked too closely. Nobody listened intently.
I was just one of them.
I sat down on the bench. That very bench. The wood was warm from the sun. I put my hands on my knees and allowed myself to look around without hiding. The woman with the birds was nearby. She nodded again, and then she said something simple about the weather. In a normal voice, I answered. Simply, too. Not in a whisper. Not loudly. Like a person. The world didn't tremble. Nothing was destroyed. We talked a little. Just a little. That was enough. I wasn't tired. I didn't feel any danger. When the conversation ended, I realized I don't need to return to silence as a refuge. I can choose it, and that's something completely different. In the evening, I returned home. The house greeted me calmly, without tension. I closed the door and suddenly noticed I'm not listening intently anymore. I'm simply living. I called my daughter. The decision came naturally. She was surprised. I could hear it in her voice. We talked longer than usual. I wasn't in a hurry to end the conversation. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the pauses. They were warm. When the conversation ended, I sat for a long time with the phone in my hands. And I smiled, quietly, to myself. That night, I lay down and didn't repeat my usual phrase. Not because I forgot, but because it was no longer needed. I still love whispering.
It's a part of me.
It's my rhythm, my depth. But now I know my voice has the right to be heard, even if it's quiet, even if it's old. Mom, speak in a whisper. I am speaking. But now not out of fear, but out of tenderness. Old age isn't when everything around you becomes quiet. Old age is when the silence inside stops being frightening. I didn't understand this right away. The understanding came slowly, like everything true. It didn't require words. One day I simply woke up and didn't feel that tightness in my chest. There wasn't that familiar weariness, as if the world was about to do something drastic. The room was the same. The walls were the same. The ceiling with the barely noticeable crack that I know by heart. But the feeling was different, as if I had stopped being a guest in my own life. I no longer listen intently to every sound. Not because I've stopped hearing, my hearing is still good. It's just that I've stopped looking for a threat where there is only life. Footsteps behind the wall are just footsteps. Laughter is just laughter. Even a loud sound no longer seems like a death sentence. Sometimes I still whisper,
Yes.
that hasn't disappeared. I whisper when I remember my husband, when I stroke my old coat, when I talk to myself before bed. There's a special tenderness in whispering. It's like a hand on your shoulder, not pushing but supporting. But now my whispering is not a hiding place. It's a choice. I've started going out into the yard more often. I sit on the bench, listening to how others live. Sometimes I join in a conversation. Sometimes I don't. Both have become acceptable. I no longer feel guilty for silence, and I'm not afraid of words. The woman who feeds the birds now knows my name. I know hers. We haven't become close. And that's good. It's enough that we recognize each other with a glance.
There is respect in that. And peace.
My daughter calls more often, or so it seems to me. I no longer count the days between calls. I don't hold the phone like a life buoy. I know the connection is there. It won't disappear if I let go for a second. Sometimes I catch myself speaking a little louder than before, and each time I wait for something, but nothing happens. The world doesn't object. It accepts. I think about the years I've lived without regret. There was a lot of silence in them, a lot of caution, a lot of unspoken things. But there was something else too. There was warmth. There was loyalty. There was the ability to hear what was hidden between the words. Not everyone is given this ability. It only comes with time and with pain. But if you survive it, it becomes a gift. I'm no longer afraid of being heard, even if my voice is weak, even if it trembles. There is life in the trembling too. Before going to sleep, I sometimes still utter the old phrase, no longer as a warning, and not as a request, but as a memory, as a sign of the path I have traveled. Mom, speak in a whisper. I smile, because I know if I suddenly want to speak louder, I can. And if I choose a whisper, it won't be out of fear, but out of love. And that is quite enough.